So back when the trailer came out, I made a video about how the Black Adam movie looks a bit mediocre. It mostly focused on how Dwayne Johnson, as an actor, doesn't really know how to act outside of playing that one character he always plays in every movie, which is basically just himself. He's not a very good actor. It also focused on the concept of villain movies and my general dislike for them, as well as the general mediocrity of the look of the trailer. There were definitely things that I was excited about and things that looked good in the trailer, like Dr. Fate and Hawkman and the JSA as a whole. But in the end, this movie was basically exactly what I expected it to be. I'd honestly double down on the Dwayne Johnson argument. This guy is a fun screen presence, and he's definitely really funny. Even in this movie playing a serious character, he has these comedic moments, and those are the moments he pulls off the best. But his acting skills, his dramatic acting skills, are very lacking. One of the taglines of this movie is "Power born from rage," but I never saw or sensed a lick of rage on Black Adam's face or his emotions. He was basically just this monotone, non-emotive person, this straight-faced person the entire movie, and it's hard to connect to a character who doesn't emote, especially when his backstory is portrayed as sympathetic. He also doesn't really have any interesting chemistry with any characters, aside from maybe his rivalry with Hawkman, but I'd say Carter Hall and Aldous Hodge playing Carter Hall carried that rivalry with his frustration at Black Adam growing throughout the movie. Other than that though, I mean, he didn't really have good chemistry with anyone, and I don't really think Dwayne Johnson expressed his emotions as well as the Black Adam character deserved. Now, to be fair to The Rock, I do think that he at least tried. It definitely felt like he attempted to branch out from his typical role, and I do respect that. Plus, he was very clearly very passionate about this character. Like, he was so passionate about Black Adam, maybe more so than anybody else on Earth. I've never seen anybody care as much about Black Adam as a character than The Rock, for some reason. And, you know, I kind of respect that, but if I'm being brutally honest, if he really was going to put everything into this movie and try to make the best possible Black Adam movie, then he would have realized that he's just not right for the role because he's not a very good actor. He would have let somebody different and somebody better play the character. Ideally, somebody who could pull off a Middle Eastern or Egyptian accent that can realistically sound like it could come from a country like Kahndaq, because Black Adam waking up after a 5,000-year slumber and inexplicably knowing English and having an American accent is a little ridiculous. The other big thing that I predicted to not like about this movie from that video is the flawed concept of villain-focused movies. It also turned out to be exactly how I expected. Now, there's nothing wrong with making a movie about a villain, but I really don't understand why studios are so against having these morally corrupted protagonists. I mean, every single time we have a movie about a villain, they turn out to be an anti-hero or just a straight-up hero, like with Venom, Morbius, and now Black Adam, and I don't get it. Like, there are tons of fantastic franchises where the main characters are straight-up evil or morally corrupt, like TV shows like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones, and the current TV show House of the Dragon. There are like no morally sound characters in that show, but people like it. People are connecting to these characters because they're complex and they have layers. For some reason, they have all these villain movies with villains as the main character. These are not good people, but they kind of are. Black Adam, the only difference between him and a hero in this movie is that he kills people. But in the MCU, heroes kill people all the time. In the DCEU, Batman killed people, Superman killed somebody, Wonder Woman kills people. It's not really that big of a difference. It's something that they kind of manufactured into this movie, that Hawkman's like, heroes don't kill people. But that doesn't make Black Adam a villain. It barely makes him an anti-hero. And I don't understand, because these movies can be a lot more interesting and a lot more unique compared to regular superhero movies if their main characters, not their villains, but their main characters are bad people. Black Adam is not a hero, at least not until recently, where brand synergy made him join the Justice League in the comics. But if you look at his history, him joining the Justice League is absolutely ridiculous. At one point, he slaughtered the entire population of another fictional country called Bialia, and he is the dictator of Kahndaq. He's not their democratically elected ruler or anything. He is a dictator. And even if all of that, even if you don't look at all of that, he's also just a murderer, and he is the arch enemy of Shazam. In this movie, however, he is a hero. He's a hero who kills people, but that doesn't mean anything. He's still a superhero in this movie. and at one point he gives up his powers because he injures a kid. He doesn't even kill him, he injures him. And in the end, he also smashes the throne of Kahndaq, like symbolically freeing the country from any oppressive rule. These are two things that are like in deep contrast to Black Adam as a character. Two things that he would never do. He would never give up his powers, and he would never give up his power over Kahndaq for anything, let alone because of some heroic act. And it's a shame because this movie could have been really interesting and very unique, where maybe we could have had this twist at the end where the entire movie is about this champion coming back from the grave to save the oppressed Kahndaq, but in the end he steals the power for himself and he becomes the Kahndaq dictator. That could have been a very, very hard-hitting ending. Instead, the movie ends up being just a typical superhero movie that paints itself as an anti-hero movie, but also is based off of a character who is a villain in the comics, and it's a bit disappointing. And now, going forward, there's not really anything to set up. Like, DC said that they want to set up Black Adam as this big Justice League villain. First of all, I've said this before, but he's not powerful enough to be a Justice League villain. Superman could beat him on his own. But even if he is powerful enough, where exactly is the conflict here? He's not doing anything bad. Like, he saved Kahndaq from the oppressive rule, he defeated the evil Satan guy, and he worked together with the Justice Society. So where exactly is the conflict here? Superman showed up in the end credit scene, which was definitely really cool to see Henry Cavill as Superman again. The fact that he hasn't been Superman for so long is ridiculous. But where exactly is the conflict? Is Superman really just following Amanda Waller's orders blindly? What exactly is the reason why Superman would have to fight Black Adam? Is it because he kills bad guys? Because Superman's best friends kill bad guys all of the time, and Amanda Waller saying that is a bit hypocritical, seeing as the Suicide Squad kills bad guys all the time as well. So in the DCEU, there wouldn't really be any conflict between the Justice League and Black Adam, or even Amanda Waller and Black Adam, and if there is, it's going to feel so manufactured, because this movie made Black Adam a superhero instead of making him a villain, which just would have been more interesting for the movie and so much more interesting for the universe that they're setting up going forward. Now, that's not to say that the movie was awful, because it really wasn't, and I never expected it to be. It's way better than like Thor: Love and Thunder, the last superhero movie that came out. It's much better than that, because it's not bad, but that's not what I thought it would be. I predicted mediocrity, and that is what we got. But mediocrity doesn't mean bad. There are definitely things to like here, especially like the action. A lot of the action is really good. I especially liked the fight scene between Black Adam and Hawkman. There are a lot of fight scenes between the two, but the one I like the most is the one in Adriana's house that had a very unique cinematography and camera work for a fight scene, kind of feeling like a live-action anime fight where the camera follows the fists and the weapons of the fighters and focuses on the impacts of the hits. That is something that I really liked, and in general, Black Adam's fight scenes are really fun to watch. It's a fun movie at times, and the action is really fun. I didn't love the villain. Like, the villain has really shoddy CGI, and he follows the iconic DCU trend of boring, bad CGI villains that aren't fleshed out nearly enough and leave no impact on pop culture or even the movie itself. But while the villain was bad, the action was definitely one of the highlights of the movie. But the actual highlight was exactly what I expected it to be: the Justice Society of America, especially Hawkman and Dr. Fate. Hawkman was badass. His morphing nth metal weapon was a very cool upgrade to Hawkman's power set that I don't think I've ever seen before, and should become a staple of the Hawk/Thanagarian's power set, because it makes it a bit more unique. Aldous Hodge was great in the role as Carter Hall and quickly became the quintessential live-action version of the character. The same could also be said about Dr. Fate, whose powers were some of the highlights of the action in this movie, and he has an incredible costume design. He looks really cool throughout this movie. I did, however, dislike how often he took off his helmet. Like, it felt like we barely saw him as Dr. Fate, and mostly just saw him as Kent Nelson, which is fine and all, but I really would have preferred if he stayed as Dr. Fate for longer, because when he is Dr. Fate, it is really badass. He looks sick, and his action and his powers are really cool. And it sucks because we're probably never going to see him again. He seemingly dies in this movie. It's a huge shame, and it feels like a huge waste. I'm at least hoping they replace him with a different Dr. Fate. like Hector Hall, or what's most likely going to happen, Khalid in the Sour. But I do feel like we should have gotten a little bit more of Kent Nelson as Dr. Fate in this universe before killing him off. The other two JSA members, other than Hawkman and Dr. Fate, didn't really do much. Like, Hawkman had his rivalry with Black Adam, which was one of the highlights of the movie for me, and Dr. Fate kept having these visions of the future, plus he just looks awesome, and ultimately he does have the big death of the movie. But the other two, Atom Smasher and Cyclone, didn't really, and their powers are definitely cool, or, you know, at least Atom Smasher's powers are cool, but neither of them did anything, neither of them really contributed to the story. They didn't really have arcs, they didn't have any cool fight scenes, and even if they did, it didn't really contribute to those fight scenes. They never did any lasting damage to Black Adam or any of the villains. They were just like there, which was definitely very disappointing. I always knew that Hawkman and Dr. Fate were going to be more important, and I was definitely more excited for those two, also because I like them both as characters and more, but I didn't really expect the other two to not do anything. But despite that, I still really enjoyed the JSA. They didn't really do anything, those two, but I did find them very entertaining. I really liked Atom Smasher and Cyclone. Their powers visually were really cool. I just would have preferred a JSA movie. I said that in my original video, and I'll say it again. This would have been way better as a JSA movie. You could even have Black Adam and or Sabbac as the main villains. But if Hawkman, Dr. Fate, Atom Smasher, and Cyclone, and a couple other members were the main characters, they took center stage, and each had their own arcs and importance in a story that focused more so on introducing the JSA into the DCEU as a powerhouse team on the level of Justice League, this would have been a much better movie. And if I'm being honest, having the JSA as side characters in a Black Adam movie is so insulting to the JSA because of what Black Adam is, and because of the reason that this movie even exists in the first place. The Rock has said in interviews that he pulled strings to take Black Adam out of the Shazam movie because he thinks the two characters deserve their own solo movies before facing off against each other. But to say that and then put the JSA, who are not only more characters, but they deserve their own movie so much more than Black Adam, to put them into the Black Adam movie as side characters shows how little The Rock understands the DC universe outside of his own tunnel-visioned role, because Black Adam doesn't really deserve his own movie. He deserves to be the main villain of a movie, or maybe even a couple movies, but his own movie, compared to the JSA, who deserve it so much more, they need more screen time to flesh out each character, and the JSA, as a group, is considered one of the corners of the universe. Black Adam is just the main villain of one character. Like, the JSA deserves their own movie so much more, so the fact that they were sidelined into the supporting role of a Black Adam movie, or two of them didn't really do anything, and Dr. Fate was killed off, so he's never going to do anything other than be the supporting character in a Black Adam movie, is so backwards. Everything about this movie is backwards. Everything about Black Adam and Shazam being separate franchises. There's been two Shazam movies and neither of them have Black Adam in them. And the fact that they're setting up Superman as the character that Black Adam's gonna face off against, and the JSA are side characters in the Black Adam movie. Everything here is so backwards and really shows how The Rock and Warner Brothers don't really understand anything about this universe and what works. They're taking characters who look cool and they're clashing them against each other instead of what works about the universe, which is why Marvel has been running circles around DC for a decade now. I won't touch on it much, but I'd say the other supporting characters were fine. Like, Adriana is fine. She goes on to become Black Adam's wife in the comics, and I don't really feel any chemistry there, but, you know, maybe next time we'll see her, she'll have powers like she does in the comics. Her brother was kind of funny at times, but his comedy was definitely trying a bit too hard. And her son was a much less funny and much less charming version of Freddie Freeman, a character who they really felt like they were trying to emulate. They were trying to copy the dynamic between Shazam and Freddie Freeman from the Shazam movie into this one. But while in the Shazam movie it was hilarious, here it just isn't. In conclusion though, Black Adam is basically exactly what I expected it to be. It's not a bad movie, it is enjoyable at times, but it could have been so much more interesting, and it's just a very poorly conceived movie that feels like it's made by people that just do not understand the DC universe, and just think that, like, the Black Adam looks cool. Like, I think The Rock just thinks that Black Adam looks cool, and that's why he likes him. I don't know. It's a mediocre movie. I'd give it a 6 out of 10.